Hey, I'm Hashem, thanks for joining. This video will be my review of the Ulanzi x Zero. This is a compact and lightweight travel tripod that I started using earlier this year during a big trip that I did, and one that I've really been liking. I've used quite a few different tripods over the last 15 plus years that I've been shooting, so I'll have some experience and comparison points to draw from and share with you here. This popular tripod sells for around $300 US and comes in the following package. It includes this nice carry case, which fits it perfectly, and includes an optional strap. You can immediately see from looking at it that it has a premium feel and quality construction. It weighs only 1.1 kilograms, but feels sturdy. My first travel tripod, which I owned for many years, was a pan and tilt headed Velbon, which served me well as I started off, but I always found the legs to be a hassle to deploy, and the big handles with the pan and tilt head reduced the compactness. And when travel opened back up post-pandemic, I eventually bought this K&F tripod in carbon fiber in 2023, which was a welcome upgrade from my old school Velbon. But despite the carbon fiber legs, it was actually heavier than my old Velbon and even less compact in the main section. At the time I purchased it, I was debating getting the Ulanzi, but caved and bought the cheaper option. It's not a bad tripod by any means. I had another trip coming up in early 2024 this year and needed to keep the kit super compact this time. Lucky for me, my friend Nick already owned the Zero Y and he kindly let me borrow his for a month or so. It ended up being the perfect tripod for that multi-country trip, where it needed to be flexible and work with various kits and sections of the trip, including a motorbike tour and various other times where I'd need to carry it around with me. When you're walking or hiking with photography gear, the weight can build up, so the few hundred grams difference between this Ulanzi and my K&F was easily felt. Not to mention the reduced bulk, making it much easier to just slip the Ulanzi into a water bottle pocket or many other spaces that wouldn't necessarily allow for the bigger tripod to fit. So after having used my friends and really liking it, I felt like I really wanted one, and lucky for me, Ulanzi actually reached out to me for a collaboration on this particular tripod because it is one of their most popular items, and of course I said yes. So this tripod was sent to me by them, just to give you full disclosure, in exchange for making this video, but lucky for them, I had already been using their product and already kind of knew what I liked about it. But yeah, I stand by everything that I had already thought about this tripod since then, and we'll break that down a little bit further. I've mentioned already how nice and compact it is. While I was especially out shooting in the snow in Japan, I appreciated how quick and easy it was to deploy the tripod in terms of these clamp-on style legs. I've mainly ever had in travel tripods these twisty style legs, which sure, they're fine, but I find that they're just a little bit slower to deploy and pack the tripod. Again, they're not bad. I think there's not a huge difference between the two mechanisms, but also when you're loosening these legs, what I think might have happened is I would accidentally loosen those feet, which could have caused that problem where I almost lost one of these a couple of times. Another thing is this is one of the style of tripods where you have to open the legs and then the neck is going to be all the way up, and then you have to lower that back to get to default position. Whereas you just unfold it and that's it. The neck is already in the default position, and then dropping the legs down just feels a lot quicker, because if you want, you can undo all the clamps at once if you know you're going to extend all four legs. So I just found it much quicker and more intuitive to use. The next thing I really loved about this tripod was the ball head. Okay, so previous tripod has a ball head too, but there's just something about this that you can tell they put a lot of thought into. So it also uses an Arca Swiss type plate, which is great because that means it might be compatible with existing tripod plates you have, or if you're like me and you use things like camera cages that are Arca Swiss, or you have other tripods or mechanisms that use that Arca Swiss plate, easy. You can just hot swap between them. Even, some phone holders have that. But yeah, in terms of the actual operation of the neck unit and ball head, they have these really smart levers. So you loosen that lever for the neck, and there's another lever on the top for loosening the ball head. And I put fairly heavy loads on this tripod. And again, I won't really go too much into numbers because you can check all these specifications and numbers out on the website. The biggest camera I've put on it is this monstrosity here, which is the Pentax 672. And this thing still only weighs 2.5-ish kilos with this massive lens on it and the handle. And even that's going to be well within the tolerance of this tripod's load limit. But yeah, the next great thing I loved about it is just that it has this dedicated pan feature. You loosen this screw and it gives you panning capability on the head there, because I do sometimes like to make that little micro adjustment of a pan when I'm composing a shot. Just a lot of great little features. There's more that you could check out on the website, including the little built-in tool, the extra attachment here for one of their phone holders, the ability to remove the neck completely and put it upside down so you have that low down angle like I mentioned before, the removable feet that you can swap for spikes in case you're using it in icy conditions or something like that. I would also normally have a list of cons in a review like this, but honestly, there's nothing that I've found so far that I could consider to be a significant con or criticism of this tripod. There might be little things that I think could bother some users that I've read online, like finding it too hard to loosen the levers. That might be a different problem for some people than others. I have fairly big hands, so I've never had struggles loosening the neck section or the ball head, so that hasn't really been an issue for me. I know some people also mention the bubble level being obscured. I don't tend to use those, so I've just yet to find anything that I don't like. That's not to say that maybe something will come up later, like the legs will loosen, but even that, they include the little key to tighten them. So I guess a pseudo criticism I have is the price. It is an expensive tripod, but in saying that, it's cheaper than competing options at this level of features and specs. One of the most popular options in this price range is the Peak Design travel tripod. Extremely popular, but that one is double the price and is even outperformed by this Ulanzi in a few departments. The Zero Y tends to sell for around $300 US or 500 Australian dollars, but I often see it on sale for less. I also asked Ulanzi for a discount code to pass on to my viewers. So if you decide to get one, you can use the code McAdam for 10% off on their website. Okay, so with everything I've covered in terms of my point of view and experience with this Ulanzi Zero Y tripod, I hope that kind of gives you an idea and helps you avoid some of the mistakes I made, like buying something in a rush or without researching too much into how I would actually use the tripod, what particular features would be beneficial that I thought, might not have been such a big deal, but then when I was out there, realized, something like how slim this is when packed was actually a big deal after all, because hooking it into a bag can become cumbersome otherwise. And if the tripod isn't light enough, you might feel lopsided or that things are too heavy. But yeah, if you want my advice and my conclusion in a nutshell is that if you can justify the price of this tripod, it's well worth it. The build quality, the features, the compactness, weight, it's much better value than something like the Peak Design tripods. For me, I could never quite justify that. So if you're in that same segment of the market, I think this is probably the best option out there. They do have different versions, like one with the quick release head, but I've already mentioned that I quite like having the Arca Swiss head because it works across other plates that I have. I particularly like this Zero Y. There's a reason why these are so popular, and yeah, I can easily recommend it. If you do want some further viewing, I can recommend a video that helped me out a lot by a channel called Gemini Connect. And she did a full breakdown comparing this to the Peak Design. I'll put the link for that video in the description. She does like a whole point system breakdown comparing it to the Peak Design, which just goes to show how much you're actually getting in terms of value for money for this Ulanzi. Anyway, there might be something else out there that I'm not aware of that sits in a similar part of the market. Feel free to leave it in the comments if you have other recommendations or thoughts on travel tripods. Thanks for watching this one. I hope it was helpful, and I'll see you next time.